The second presentation will be by Dr. Geert Medema. He is a advisor on policy for monuments in municipality of Schiedam. Сейчас второй наш выступающий — это доктор Geert Medema, который работает советником по охране наследия города Schiedam. Geert Medema, alsjeblieft.
Well, thank you for this nice introduction, and thanks to the first speaker for introducing one of the main characters of my speech, Harman van Boldness, or Van Boldness, as you can call him. First of all, I would like to explain my involvement in this seminar, because I myself have not done any research on specific relations between the Netherlands and Russia or the Baltic. The reason I am speaking today to you is an important and interesting player like this Harman van Boldness in the first phase of the construction of St. Petersburg. Harman van Boldness, or Boldness as his surname become Russified, or Van Boldness, there are many ways to pronounce his name. This Harman came to my attention during my own PhD research into public building in the city of Schiedam in the 18th century. My research in Schiedam was part of a larger study of a public building organization in Dutch cities in the 18th century. And Schiedam was very interesting because it makes a great development in the 18th century. This Harman van Boldness is the descendant from the same family that supplied 4 successive city architects in Schiedam during the 18th century. And this in itself is unique. Even in the 18th century context, where it's not unusual for offices to be considered inheritable, the succession from father to son, from father to son, from father to son was indeed exceptional. Perhaps even as exceptional as the career of Harman van Boldness, who, after his arrival in St. Petersburg, spent the rest of his life as a master builder in imperial service. He remained in service for more than 50 years until he died in 1764, and as the former speaker explained, he was very well integrated into the city and the city life. My knowledge of Harman's career comes mainly from an article by Boris Marakov, who was also mentioned earlier. And in this article, he describes the way how Harman leaves Holland for Russia to work at the Tsar's service to build up this new city of St. Petersburg. In these new surroundings, Harman succeeds in working on all kinds of projects, in collaboration with important architects such as Strazzini and Semtsov. His area of work and expertise were broad, from the construction of cables, bridges, sluices or waterlogs, to water towers for the water springs in the summer gardens of Peter the Great, but also many spires were built by this Harman van Boldness. What was perhaps even more remarkable, as Boris Marakov mentions, was that Harman succeeded and integrated into the local building system and made himself indispensable in making the creation of the new city in its water-rich environment a success. Makarov describes the way that he organized this work as one of the great reasons for his success in his new found fatherland. Harman could, by all accounts, be described as a talented master builder who was good at his job and knew how to best serve his clients and his masters. The contribution of his knowledge and experience in hydraulic engineering cannot be underestimated, the importance from that. This knowledge, I would argue, was founded in his family and is explained if you look into his family situation. Here I show you a small part of a family tree from the family. His father, the father of Harman van Boldness, was himself at least the 4th generation of successive master carpenters and mill makers from the vicinity of Ridderkerk. The surname Van Boldness is derived from the place Boldness in which they were located, and it became only the family name after Cornelis moved away from this area in search of more challenging and more profitable work environment. There was no external reason for this move away from Boldness. Boldness and Ridderkerk lie within polders which needed skilled craftsmen for the maintenance of the many polder mills which were needed to keep the land dry and usable. On the left side, you can see the mills of the World Heritage Site of Kinderdijk, which is exactly in this region. So there is a lot of work for talented mill makers, and there was no reason he could not have entered into the family business in his own environment. It proved that his ambitions were larger, and he searched employment elsewhere, this Cornelis, the father of Harmen. Cornelis Harmenszoon van Boldness first left in 1688 to the polder of Weidewormer, lying north of Amsterdam, and established himself there as a mill maker. In the following year, the year he married, he moved to Amsterdam, and again he became a mill maker in the city of Amsterdam. City life must have agreed with him, because in 1690, so within 2 years, he has 3 places where he moves. He becomes the city architect of Schiedam, and he moves again to the southern part of the province of Holland. After this step, the family Van Boldness will remain strongly connected with this city. In particular because, as I mentioned, the family supplied 4 successive city architects. Another interesting person to draw attention to from within this family of Van Boldness is Pleun van Boldness. This is the brother of Cornelis, and like his brother, he leaves Boldness and the family business to work as an architect and master builder elsewhere. He settles in the city of Stevensweert and became the architect and master builder of Prince William of Hessen Castle. I believe it's a sign of professional ambition within this family that the family members deliberately pursued these kinds of offices. It is a sign of their skill that they succeeded in this ambition. With these permanent posts in local government, of course, there's also a level of elevation above and beyond the realm of mere craftsmen. The Boldness family members were certainly competent. The way in which the children literally grew up in the father's company will certainly have contributed to their skills. At a time where there was no formal training for master builders in the Republic of the Netherlands, learning a craft from an accomplished boss, or indeed from your father, was for many the starting point of their career. We know that ambitious building masters and engineers in this period would venture out into the country to go and have traineeships and internships with interesting projects. In Holland, the emphasis was always on hydraulic engineering, the construction of dikes and cribs, the making of waterlocks and sluices, and the construction of mills. The actual design of architecture, drawing of plans, and planning of buildings was of secondary importance. The study through internships and hands-on experience could be enhanced by the studying of publications on all kinds of matters of architecture, or on very specific subjects like mill building. Within the Van Boldness family, the own family network also provided ample opportunity to complete the training of children. We know, for example, that Arie van Boldness, the son of Cornelis and the brother of Harmen, worked as an apprentice to his uncle Pleun in Stevensweert and assisted this uncle in making drawings for the Huis Hagenbroek near Voorn. So he ventured out to the business of his uncle to learn more of his job and to experience firsthand new surroundings and new questions and other types of projects. There is no, we do not know if Harmen also did the same thing, but there's also no reason to believe he didn't. We also know that Harmen when he was settled in St. Petersburg, sent his sons back to Holland to complete their education and training in the arts of the building trade. We can be sure that he would be using his family connections for this purpose. The fact that his son settled, that's the son of Harman, settled permanently in Schiedam around 1750, after he had an own appointment in imperial service in St. Petersburg, confirms that the family ties remained strong. Just as the work of Harman van Bollès in St. Petersburg gives the most clear impression of his knowledge and skills, so does the work of his father Cornelis and his brother Arie van Bollès. It is particularly interesting to look at Arie's career and to draw parallels with the work of Harman. This also leads, and I find it a bit funny, to parallels between the spatial challenges of a city like Schiedam with metropolis like St. Petersburg. I find it funny because Schiedam is a very small city in comparison. Here we see Schiedam depicted around 1700. It's a typical Dutch town, relatively small compared to other cities in Holland with about 8,000 inhabitants, where cities like Rotterdam, Delft and Leiden were easily 3 to 6 times this size. However, Schiedam, like these other cities, holds a position within the provincial government. So it is in the hierarchy of cities, it's on a front runner. Schiedam did not benefit equally from the huge increase in wealth during the Dutch Golden Age. It was a herring fishery town, not very prosperous. At the moment that Cornelis van Bollès in 1690 becomes city architect, the city stands at the beginning of an economic reorientation. In the 18th century, Schiedam will become the main producer of Geneva or gin in the Netherlands. And thanks to this production of alcohol, Schiedam will be experiencing a golden age of its own in the second half of the 18th century, leading to an extensive building program. This golden age is beyond the grasp of this lecture, but it's very interesting for me as an architectural historian. When looking at the geography of the city, it's also clear that the location of Schiedam is typically Dutch or typical for the province of Holland. It's located at the estuary of the river Schie. And you see the Schie running, you see the Schie running here. Its origin, the origin of the city derived from the construction of a dam in the 13th century. It also lies near the river Nieuwe Maas, a river delta under the influence of the tide of the North Sea. The city is surrounded by polders and wetlands. The peatlands offer a weak surface, which is challenging for construction. It is then no surprise that the city structure is determined by its waterways, the dikes and the ports. The maintenance of quays, bridges, locks is an important task for the public building company, which is headed by the city architect. Experience from the city architect in hydraulic engineering and mill construction is therefore very important. The parallel with the task on and around St. Petersburg, a city built in and around the water, is clear, although the size of the challenges is of course incomparable. The city of Schiedam does not develop a large public building program in the beginning of the 18th century. Most public buildings had been built in previous centuries and needed only to be maintained. It was not until the 1740s that increasing prosperity created the need for new construction of public buildings. By then, Arie van Bollès, brother of Harman, was in charge as city architect. He succeeded his father in 1724 and headed the public building company for more than 50 years. Arie van Bollès is responsible for a very large number of public buildings in Schiedam. Among other things, he added a tower to the old town hall, top left, built a city bank of loan, bottom left, the so-called Blauhuis, an institution for fallen women, on the top right, and the Doelen building, which is the building where the city militia practiced. The architecture of these buildings is in no way exceptional and would not merit special attention. The ornamental value is often derived from sculpture that was created and designed by others. It is solid architecture with no frills. Van Bollest's turrets are beautiful and suitable in the Schiedam size and context, and their construction would not have been a problem for an experienced mill maker. The wooden construction is very the same as for a mill. This is, of course, a direct parallel to his brother Harmen, who was also in the St. Petersburg area responsible for many spires of churches and otherwise. Of course, the size is completely different, but that is explainable by the demands of an imperial context above a Dutch town context. More interesting, however, are some of the waterworks that Ari carried out in the 1760s. In particular, the construction of the so-called Buitensluis, a sluice in the outer harbor of the city near the river Nieuwemaas. This sluice was meant to protect the city behind it from high water. It had to be wide enough to allow seagoing vessels into the city's inner harbors. Moreover, it fulfilled a crucial function in the city's water system, whereby a system of flow was devised to prevent the silting of the inland ports. At every flood, water was let into the ports, after which the sluice doors were locked and closed, and then at low tide, the doors were opened again, with which the water was led with great force through the ports and spewed through the outer port by the sluice. The aim from this was to carry as much sand and silt as possible to the river. In 1769, it became apparent that the existing sluice no longer was structurally safe, and it needed to be replaced. Ari van Bollest decided to construct an entirely new sluice next to the old one. And here are its designs. However, this had the important advantage to build an entire new sluice next to the old one, had an important advantage that the access to the city was not closed during the work. However, the city council wanted to have the project tested independently. The shifting of the sluice could have an impact on the operation of the water system and the accessibility of the harbors. For this reason, two military engineers employed by the province of Holland and charged with the oversight of the fortifications of the province were asked to assess the project and the plan. The judgment of these top architectural officials was unanimous. They expressed themselves in high praise of the proposed project of the city architect. The project met all the requirements and was well thought out. The design with its intersecting doors, which allowed the lock to be opened very quickly, was very suitable to optimize the effect of the water system. Therefore, the professional assessment was that Ari van Bollest was an excellent sluice builder. And also the plans of these sluices, which were made by Ari and kept in the city archive, show the quality of his work. The quality of the drawing is very high and an indication of his skills. It makes clear that in this kind of field, the expertise of this city architect really lies. It's not in this architecture, it is within these kind of projects. It was one of the last projects which he executed within his Schiedam employment because he died several years later. To conclude, both brothers, Harmen and Ari, became successful and managed to make the best out of their talent and education provided by their family in the context of their working life. You can, of course, be certain that the story of Harmen in St. Petersburg is far more interesting, and I almost have to apologize that this lecture focused on in more detail about his Dutch relatives. But I believe it makes clear the context in which this Harmen had followed his education, and also the network which he could use within his own family for the training of his own children. So it is a complement to the former story. I hope, of course, that it leads to more insight for the Russian research, and I would be very interested to answer questions about this Van Boles family here in the Netherlands. I thank you for your attention.